Okay, so today we're going to talk about active and passive voice. Maybe you've heard of active and passive voice, but today we're going to go over it and talk about it in some detail so that you can really understand why we use it, each one, and how to use it. Usually, when we speak and when we write, we use active voice, but sometimes we need to use passive voice. Okay, first let me explain a few things before I explain what each one is. All right, when you have a sentence, usually you need to have a subject and you need to have a verb and an object. Let me explain what these three are. You probably already know, but I'll just explain. Subject is what the sentence is about and what does the action or the verb to the object. Let me give you a quick example of this. I gave money to him. I gave money to him. I is the subject of the sentence because this is what the sentence is about. And it is also what does the action. The action is gave. Gave what? Gave money. Okay, so gave is the verb. Gave is the verb. I is the subject. And him is the object, or what gets the action. The object is what receives. What receives the action. So that's how you can think about the object. The subject is the doer, usually, or what the sentence is about, what or who the sentence is about. Again, you know verb, the action, and then what receives the action. So this person, him, didn't do any action, they just got some action. So we can consider this as the object. Now we have some typical or some common subject forms and object forms. Let me go over those quickly. Usually a subject, or at the beginning of the sentence, will be I, you, he, it, we, they. And the object will typically be in this kind of sentence anyway. The object will usually be me, you, him, her, it, us, them, right? So him is the object of the sentence. So it is this form, not he. I gave the money to he. We can't say that. And I is the subject, so we can say it like this. We don't say me gave the money to him. We could say, though, he gave the money to me. Now, he is the subject doing the action, and I am the object receiving it, so I would say me. But in this place in the sentence, we cannot change it. It must be he at the beginning. We can't begin a sentence with him. So, these are active voice sentences. An active voice sentence is when you have a subject, an object, a verb, and then an object. Subject, verb, object. So let me give you a couple of examples. I painted the house a light shade of blue. I painted the house a light shade of blue. I am the subject. Painted is the action I did. And house is the object, or what receives the action. A light shade of blue is just the detail. Okay, so a shade of blue, a shade of a color is when you have a certain color and it is a kind of that color. So for example, dark blue, light blue. A shade is what kind of blue is it? What kind of red is it? It is a shade. We could say a shade of red, a shade of blue. All right, so this is an active voice sentence because it follows this structure, this format: subject, verb, object. And usually when we speak, we use active voice. Something or person does something to another thing. And usually we do not say the object gets the action first. But sometimes we need to. Sometimes we need to. Let's try to change this first sentence into a passive sentence. We start with the object. Now we change the object to the subject, but in some way it is still the object. That means it's still in a passive sentence. The subject is only the subject in grammar but not in the fact that it does the action. So it becomes the subject of the sentence, the new subject of the sentence, but it is still the thing or person that receives the action. So the house was painted a light shade of blue by me. So here we have before, which was the subject, and we can say in some way still the subject. Here we have the thing doing the action or the person doing the action. Me, right? I painted the house. The meaning of these two is the same. The meaning is the same. But in this sentence, we said the house first. Okay? The house was painted. The house didn't do anything. It is still receiving the action. It is still receiving the action. So in that way, it is still the object. But we say it is the new subject of the sentence. The new subject of the sentence. Okay? So the house was painted a light shade of blue. Now let's look at these two sentences and see which one we like better. The house was painted a light shade of blue, or I painted the house a light shade of blue. Most people would say that this sentence sounds better, and I would agree. However, sometimes we prefer to say the passive sentence type when we want to focus on the house and we don't care about who did it. The house was painted a light shade of blue by me. Now, if we really don't care who did it, we can take this out. The house was painted a light shade of blue, and that's it. The house was painted a light shade of blue. It's still a passive voice sentence because what was the object before is now the subject and is still the object of the verb. It is the subject of the sentence, but it's still the object of the verb. That means it is getting the action, not doing the action. Okay? So when we write a passive sentence, we follow this structure. We say we have an object, but we write it as the subject. That means we say he, it, he, I. So it's the object because it receives the verb. It gets the verb, but we write it as the subject of the sentence. Plus, now we have our verb. But look, this is I painted. It is simple past here, right? This one, painted, is simple past. Simple past tense. But when we use the passive voice, we use the past participle. The past participle is a form of the verb. We use the past participle for passive voice. So instead of saying painted, we say was painted. Was painted. Let me give you a few examples of past participle verbs. Arisen, awoken instead of awoke, which would be the simple past. Simple past is awoke. Awoken is the past participle. Been, beaten, begun, begun, bitten. So these are just some examples, okay? So the house was painted a light shade of blue. We could say the house was painted a light shade of blue by me. Both okay. All right, let's look at some other examples. Let's do some other examples. I gave all the villagers, all the thirsty villagers, water yesterday. All right, so is this an active sentence or a passive sentence? Well, I is the subject and I gave something. So because I am doing some action, this is going to be an active voice sentence, right? Because I'm not receiving anything. I'm not getting any action. I'm not the object of any action. I'm doing something. So I gave all the thirsty villagers. The thirsty villagers are the objects. Okay, and I gave them what? I gave them water. When did I give them water? Yesterday. Now, if I say this sentence, it's a good sentence and sounds nice, but it makes me sound very selfish. It seems like I am more important than these thirsty villagers. And usually when you talk about a situation like this, the villagers are more important than me, right? Do we really care who gave the water? Well, if we think I am great, I'm wonderful, then yeah, we can say I gave the thirsty villagers water. I am great and kind. But again, it sounds very selfish. It's not very good, I think. So instead, in this kind of situation, maybe we can use the passive voice. So how can we do that? All the thirsty villagers. So now we have this object, all the thirsty villagers, still the object, but we now write it as the grammar subject of the sentence. Now we need the past participle, were given water yesterday by me. And again, do we need to say by me? Well, we don't have to if it's not that important. All the thirsty villagers were given water yesterday. This is a passive voice sentence, and it is better than this one, in my opinion, because we're focusing on the villagers. The villagers are more important than who gave them water, right? Than I. So when the object, we can say this is a rule for passive voice. When the object is more important than the subject or the doer of the action, we can use passive voice and leave out who or what did the action. Okay, so it's not important to say I. We can do it this way. Let's do some more examples. A crazy person burned their house down. We can say last month. Okay, so this is an active sentence because crazy person is doing something, right? Crazy person is burning something. But maybe we want to focus on the house and not the crazy person. We can still say it though. We could say it like this. Their house was, now we use the past participle, was burned down last month by a crazy person. Now, how do you know it's passive? Well, one easy way to do it is just to say to yourself, if I can add by somebody, then it's probably going to be passive voice. If I cannot, it's probably active voice. I couldn't say a crazy person burned down their house by something something. No, that doesn't work. But I can say this. Their house was burned down last month by a crazy person. Okay, so if we take this out, their house was burned down last month, it is still a passive sentence because we can add by. But you can also look at what's happening here. Their house was burned down. First, you can look at this past participle, and you can say, well, the house didn't do anything, right? The house just had something happen to it. The house had some action happen to it, and so it's passive voice. The house is getting some action. It's not doing some action, right? So because this is what's happening, we can say it's passive voice. Okay, let's just look at a couple more examples here. All the exams have been taken. Active or passive? Well, the active voice would be the students took all the exams. See, simple past, have been taken, past participle. So it is a passive sentence. This one is. And it's better in this case, perhaps, if we want to focus on the exams and not the students. Okay? They have designed 20 homes in just 2 months. Okay, so here we have a subject, have designed. Well, this, okay, could be past participle. 20 homes in just 2 months. Well, they are designing something, though. They are designing something. And so this is going to be an active sentence. How can we make this passive? Over 20 houses have been designed in just 2 months. And we could add by them. We could add by them, but let's not do that. Now it's a passive sentence, and we can say it maybe is better if we want to focus on how many houses are designed and not focus on who did the designs. So if we're talking about these people, they, them, then we can say they have designed 20 homes. If we're talking about the number of homes, we can say over 20 houses have been designed in just 2 months. I said homes. So that's when it's more useful. Okay? Nobody speaks English here. Or, this is an active one, right? Directly saying nobody speaks English. English isn't spoken here. English isn't spoken here. So here's the past participle. This one is a passive sentence. Now, why would we say this one and not this one? Well, this one focuses on the general thing that's happening here and not what really happened or who is doing it. So actually, I think this one is better for this situation. Okay, and I'll give you one more example. The TV was left on all night. If I want to focus on the TV and not who left the TV on, I will say this one. So this is a passive sentence because the TV isn't doing anything. If I want to say who did it, I would say I left the TV on all night. But we don't need to say this one because maybe there's only one person living here to leave the TV on. So it's obvious who left the TV on. We don't need to say it, right? Oops. So it's obvious who left the TV on. We can just say it this way when we want to focus on the TV. All right. So think about when you need to use active, which is usually, and when you need to use passive. And you use passive voice, again, when you want to focus on the thing or person that received the action. Okay, and then you say that first, you make it the subject of the sentence, and then you can often leave out the original or the thing or person that did the action. Okay? So practice some of these, and if you have any questions about them, ask me on WeChat. I can help you, and I can tell you which ones are passive and which ones are active. I know it's a little bit difficult, but if you know when to use it, you can really express yourself more clearly. Okay? So again, if you have any questions, just ask me on WeChat, and I will see you next time.